dance for joy or lust or anger in every time.
So welcome to Sensible Secondhand Classics. This is a 1991 Vauxhall Nova Saloon 1 litre trip with 4-speed gearbox, and it's extremely charming. So I have my sunglasses on today because, well, it is very sunny. The Nova Saloon came with various engines throughout its life. The bottom one was this, the 1 litre OHV engine, which develops 45 horsepower. There was also a 1.2 which was available throughout the life of the car. That started off by developing 55 horsepower, but by the end of production, as you'll hear me mentioning later on, it actually developed only 45 horsepower. It's like a sort of replacement for the 1 litre when they started to introduce things like catalytic converters and fuel injection. Then there was a 1.3 engine. Again, that was a family 1 engine. It's a very good engine actually. It's the same one that it was actually in that Mark 1 Astra that I drove at the end of last year. It developed 70 horsepower. Later on that was switched, I think around 88, 89, for a 1.4 with 72 horsepower. But again, when the car had to cope with emissions regulations from January 1993, they had to power it down with 1.4 engine, and so it developed just 60 horsepower after that. There are also some diesels available, but as usual, due to controversial government legislation and all kinds of other reasons, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. What we do talk about instead are the trim levels available in one of these cars. There was a base model, later that was a thing called the Merit, and then the L and GL and the Lux. I think there was also a Lux Plus possibly as well. Special editions were the Expression, the Fun, the Spin, the Trip like this, and the Pearl. Goodness me, viewers, here's a sight that you don't see every day. It's a 1991 Vauxhall Nova Saloon, and this is the 1 litre trip model. I don't really know what the trip specification got you, apart from some sort of graphics on the side of the car, as you can see here. These mirrors were originally not internally adjustable. This centre console actually comes out, and it wasn't part of the car originally because you lift that up. You didn't get a clock either. In fact, you really didn't get anything. All you got was this this nice cassette stereo. But that's not really the point of a car like this. It was just the most basic sort of transportation that you could possibly imagine. It's quite a late Nova. It's after the final facelift, which occurred about 1990. And it's still got the good old 1 litre overhead valve engine, which originally came into the Cadet A in about 1962, I think it was. That engine dates from. It's similar to the one that was used in the Viva and the Chevette up until the early 1980s, but I think there are some differences. This car was built in Spain, along with I think all the cars for the UK market, so different from the Chevette in that respect. And this one originally came from Northern Ireland. Hence the plates and also that reproduction dealer sticker there, which is interesting. I do apologise for the fact that the road is a little bit noisy on my right hand side. We'll have a look in the boot first, because this is a sort of interesting thing about this car, is that you could get the saloon version, and they were relatively popular. In fact, my father-in-law used to have one of these about the time that this car was made in 1991, but his was a much older one. It was about a B, I think, or even an A, probably a 1.2, which used to take my lady wife and her sisters on family holidays. And there is a story about that where the car just was so underpowered with 5 people and the luggage that the sisters had to get out and had to walk up the hill because it just wouldn't go up with them all in it. So there we go. We can just peel this back. There's still several carpets in here to remove before we get to a spare wheel that's right there. I think what it is that the sort of standard kind of Nova finishes about there where that seam is, and then you have all this kind of boot to put your things in. Not the most practical boot in a way, because you can't fold the rear seats at all, and it's a very high lip, which was not addressed with any of the facelift. It's a very high lip on this car. You can see Mr. Ben Walker was in this concourse section of Festival Unexceptional. So those of you who were there who have seen the videos of this car, of that event, sorry, might have seen this actually there. We've got LED rear light there. That's obviously been changed. Do not, under any circumstances though, put this key in the boot. Do not put it in there because you will be stranded and you won't be going anywhere. So I'm putting that in my back pocket so we don't have that problem today, particularly as it's about 29 degrees out here. So one thing Ben just told me is that this seat only goes back that far. I thought it would go back a little bit further, but it doesn't. So this is the minimum legroom you have, and actually it's quite a square shape, so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get in relatively easily. Actually, for a really small car, that's not too bad. It's the main problem is actually getting my foot in here. That's all right. Yeah, it's not too bad. This is the original fabric. Ben's got some seat covers on here. He's actually had this car since he was pretty young, I think, before he had a driving license. Got speakers in here. Very, very big parcel shelf. My head's actually just about touching. It's not uncomfortable. If I put my hand above here, I can just about clear it. So if you are up to 6 foot, you'll be okay in here. And because the driver's seat doesn't go back any further, you can recline it a little bit more. Even if you've got a driver of the same height that I am at 5'11", it's actually not bad for sort of medium journey. But you don't really want 3 of you in here unless you're 3 very small girls, which is what my lady wife and her sisters were back in the time when they had to get out and walk up that hill. We've got ashtray in here, and also windy windows, of course. I don't think you could get a Nova with electric windows at all, to be honest, particularly not poverty spec like this. But yeah, it's okay. It'll do. It's actually quite comfortable seat, which I wasn't really expecting. Okay, let's get inside and have a look at this facelifted Nova interior. The earlier Novas did have a different interior, and if you want to see what that looks like for the ones that were before the first facelift had occurred, I think it was around 1986, the first facelift. Then I'll put a link to that in the description below. It's an 85 1.2L 3-door. But this is the infamous, the infamous hazard light switch. It doesn't work on all cars, that, in case you were wondering. This has carbon, so I don't think actually that would work in that particular thing, if you were thinking about that. Glove box. I'll have to get some commission documents out and have a look and see if that goes in, but we have very, very spacious door pockets in this car. They go all the way to the back, which is good. One thing that doesn't go all the way to the back is the seat. So the driving position is quite cramped, and if we look down there, you can see the accelerator pedal's in quite sort of interesting place just here. You get used to it. It's not too bad, but it's not the best driving position I've ever had. That clock was not part of this trip specification from new. That's been added, and so has that internal adjustment for the door mirror. Just to give you an idea of just how basic these are. Only got a 4-speed gearbox. Unlike a lot of the other Vauxhall gearboxes of this era, you don't pull the collar to get into reverse, you just push it down. Sort of more similar to a Volkswagen in that way. No rev counter, of course, and just 29,000 miles on the clock, which is totally and utterly ridiculous. Got headlamp switch, which is familiar to a lot of people who've had General Motors cars from the 1980s, I'm sure. Fog lamp, and a height adjuster, but no dimble instruments or anything like that. And a good old-fashioned choke, because we're on a carb, and it's got an OHV engine. Isn't that just fantastic? One tiny little interior light, which you can't do anything about. I think you pulled out that switch there to keep it on, if you wanted to close the doors. The most simple controls I've ever seen for heating and ventilation. Face, feet, demist. That's it. Nothing else. Rated when I switched integrated into there. And of course, a day like today, we're having that right down on the cold setting. Cigarette lighter, again, not part of specification for the trip. That has been added later. Right, let's get these documents out and see if we can fit them in that glove box. Right, viewers, here we go. Promising. Yes! Wow. I didn't realise a Vauxhall Nova would be the perfect car for spy work, but it appears that it is. Let's have a look at the engine. Good old Opel OHV engine here. Dating back to the 60s. I think this was replaced by like a lower powered version of the 1.2 Family 1 engine that we saw in the previous Nova in about 1992. So it actually would go through Euro 1 emission standards and fitted with fuel injection and catalyst. It took it down to about the same power as this, about 45 horsepower. That coolant reservoir looks very familiar, doesn't it? As does that oil filler cap. Loads and loads and loads of room to work on the engine. I think you could even fit a 2-litre red top into a Nova, which is pretty crazy to me, but that's the way that it goes. Also, there's the fuel filter just there. Gearbox, very accessible, just down there, a little 4-speed unit. Yeah, we've even got headlamp protectors on this. Somebody obviously really cared about that. Okay, time for another drive, I think. Lloyd Vehicle Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. Let's talk a bit more about how this Nova Saloon drives. One thing you do have to get used to pretty much immediately are the brakes, or the lack of brakes. There is a brake servo, but really it doesn't seem to make any difference. It is slow to act as anything. You might as well, to be honest, not have it. It's rather like the Mark II Polo that was sort of gone against in the market, because they were sold alongside each other from 82 to 1990, and then the facelift occurred in 1990 and then they all got a brake servo. But in right-hand drive markets, the Mark II Polo didn't have a brake servo. I've driven one of those in Sensible Secondhand Classics last year, and the brakes were just as terrible as this. I think there's probably slightly more feel in the braking system, but it's really like an on-off button. It's a bit terrible, really. That's one thing you've got to get used to. The handling is quite easy. The driving position's not the best. I'm all the way back, and the seats really too far forward for me, and my legs are too up sort of near my ears, but it's fine. The steering's actually very, very light. You can feel it's not power assisted, but it's rather like in a Mark II Fiesta or a Metro or something. You don't need it. You also don't need to drive around these roads in a massive BMW X4. You can drive around in a 31-year-old Nova and have just as much fun. The handling's actually okay. The steering isn't the most direct to the hand. It's not like a Metro. That's very direct steering. There's a little bit less feel in it. But probably for most people it is slightly easy to drive. You just got to watch those brakes. Just got to make sure you really plan where you're going to brake and everything. But it's just a very, very easy car to drive once you get used to the fact that you do have to use a manual choke and the brakes aren't particularly good. It's very, very appealing, this. It's not nearly as slow as I was expecting. I thought this would be horrendously slow, and it's actually okay. I'm actually sort of quite enjoying this. I thought I would need the 1.4 Lux model to enjoy my Nova experience, but actually this has been a pleasant surprise. So viewers, this concourse condition Nova Trip Saloon, is this something that you should consider as a sensible second-hand classic for a budget between £1,000 and £5,000? Well, I've just asked Ben what goes wrong with these cars, and he said about this particular engine, 1 litre OHV, that they do have problems with timing slipping. But other than that, he said there's not really much that goes wrong with them. I mean, rust obviously is a problem. Crash damage, if you're looking at a sort of faster one than this, possibly someone's modified them to distasteful kind of specification. That's something to be aware of. But other than that, I think this could be one of the most sensible second-hand classics out there. Thank you ever so much indeed for watching this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below. Thank you again to Ben for letting me have a go in his pride and joy. And we'll see you again soon for more affordable classic motoring.